Hey Young Turks, I'm Nomi Konst. We are here in New York today talking about New York politics, the movement, the Democrats, and what Democrats can do to win back some of these seats across the country. What's the secret formula? Well, this week there was a race in Long Island for an assembly seat in New York that got national attention because they turned the district not just from red to blue, but a very heavy Trump district to a Democratic district by 40 points. That was New York. Now she's Assemblywoman-elect Christine Pellegrino, and our guest is Bill Lipton of the Working Families Party, and the Working Families Party was very involved in Christine Pellegrino's race. So I'm going to ask him, what's the secret to the success?
I think there's a couple of secrets, if you will. The first is Christine. We need candidates like Christine Pellegrino. She is just a dynamic, wonderful person. When you think about what democracy is supposed to mean, you think about people like your neighbors who you admire and respect, like maybe a teacher like Christine Pellegrino, a leader in the opt-out movement that's standing up to the over-testing of our kids. She was a Bernie Sanders delegate. But holding aside her politics, she wakes up every morning thinking about how she can do right by her kids, how she can build her community. She's just a terrific candidate, and she had the trust and love of literally hundreds of people who are going to go out and work for her every day. So she just had this amazing base. I've been doing politics for 25 years, and I've rarely seen such incredible energy. So I think Christine's authenticity, her real commitment to progressive values in her community, her strong support for her union. She comes out of the New York State United Teachers, NYSUT. All those things really resonated with working class voters, working class people in Suffolk, of which there are quite a lot, even though it went heavily for Trump. So given who she is and the kind of message she had, that was really appealing to people who had voted for Trump. I don't think a lot of those folks saw the contradiction between voting for Trump and going for Christine. So I think the fact that she really resonated with working class values, that was really critical. A second secret is, we have to fight hard. When we first started this thing and Christine was interested, our biggest problem was not the Republican Party, it was the Democratic Party. The Democrats didn't believe this was a winnable seat. The Democrats didn't want to support Christine. They had a candidate who, quite frankly, was not impressive. And it was kind of a throwaway
The Democrats had a candidate they had chosen.
Yes.
Not Christine.
That's right.
Interesting.
That's right. So the Working Families Party and our allies, the New York State United Teachers, we actually went to the Democratic Party and we cajoled and pushed. And at the end of the day, we pressed really, really hard. And we had to come out and really fight for this thing. And we were able to turn that around and force the Democrats to nominate Christine rather than this throwaway candidate. So that was, we had to fight for this thing. So, and then a last secret I will just say was there was this incredible synergy on this campaign between the institutions like the Working Families Party, like the New York State United Teachers, and these incredible activists that have come out of the Bernie Sanders campaign, and just the community people who just know and love Christine. We had different pieces of the puzzle that we provided, but we worked together, and there was a synergy there that was really special. A lot of people think, you have to run a top-down campaign, and other people you have to run a bottom-up campaign, and you can't, institutions are no good, and only grassroots are good. We actually had a lot of both in a ways that were just an interesting mix, and it worked very well.
Let's talk a little bit about these institutions, because there are so many people who have gotten involved in politics recently, have decided that they want to run for office, whether it's out of the Bernie Sanders campaign or in this post-Trump world that we live in, all the women that have signed up, pledging that they're going to run for office. Okay, so that's great. You're there. Now you actually have to run.
Right.
And to me, what I found fascinating about Christine's race is she was a community activist. Yeah. And she was able to push through with the assistance of the Working Families Party and NYSUT and some of these institutional players. But how does somebody who's never navigated that land before break through and make the case that they are the right fit, so that we don't depend on these typical politicians, the ones who do understand how to navigate the political institutions?
It's a great question, and I think the truth is that in a perfect world, the Democratic Party itself would be focused on these candidate pipelines, working with these activists, working with the grassroots movements that are out there, saying, wow, you're a person who wants to be involved in your community. let's help you run for school board. Let's help you run for local town council. And then let's help you your career, in politics. Let's help you support you so that you can move up the pipeline into higher office. Maybe, who knows, maybe into Congress, right? Or more. So, but that is not happening. The reason why we've lost nearly 1,000, the Democrats have lost over 1,000 races at the state level, local level, around the state around the country in the last 8 years, is because the Democratic Party has ceased to provide that function, right? Here in New York, the Democratic Party has literally no staff at all. And their filing is very, very thin. I encourage people to go to the New York State Board of Elections and they'll see a very small number of $50,000 contributions from real estate and hedge fund contributors.
In New York.
Yes.
The New York Democratic Party, one of the largest states. We've heard about this, and I covered the DNC race, so a lot of our viewers are aware that the state parties have not been funded.
The state parties have atrophied. They become controlled by different players who have their own interests, and they've lost connection to a broader sense of mission of what the Democratic Party is supposed to be fighting for. So here, in New York State, we have had to do, the Working Families Party has formed our own independent progressive political structure because we've been so frustrated with this, right? Outside the Democratic Party, we've been doing trainings we've trained hundreds and hundreds of people just this year. We had, Christine, the first time we met her was at a candidate training in Huntington, Long Island. And we were like, you shouldn't wait your turn. You need to run now. And we gave her that initial encouragement. I mean, she was inspired herself to run, but we were right there at the beginning saying, you're great, you're the kind of person we need in office. And it wasn't the Democratic Party. So we've been doing these trainings all over the place. But quite frankly, I think it's going to be hard for individuals to break through in these areas where there's these entrenched Democratic Party establishment structures that are not encouraging participation. In many cases, I mean, there are pockets that are great, right? But in many cases, they're discouraging new candidates and participation because they're all about control and their own power. And I think we actually need to build working families parties or in organizations like that, these state-based independent political organizations around the country. And we're now in 13 states. I think we're going to be in 15, 16, 17 very soon. We're in talks with lots of different folks. And our job is actually to form that synergy we saw in Christine, again in all these other places. Because quite frankly, we need the Christines and the incredible activists to succeed, and they need us to be able to give them the support, the muscle, the technical know-how to be able to navigate the party structures and the establishment and be able to break through. So we need to develop that synergy over and over again in places so that we can both help each other.
What are the kinds of candidates right now that are being picked by the parties? When they decide to go for a throwaway candidate in a race that they don't think they're going to win, or when they pick, the party decides to pick a candidate, their type, what's the type they actually look for?
Well, I think that often the local leadership is thinking about a broader deal that they're trying to make. They're not looking at necessarily a long-term picture of how do we develop a class of folks that we're investing in over the next 10 years, right, who are going to be terrific, bold, populist champions that can win in Trump country, that really have working-class values, that believe in racial justice, believe in climate justice, that have that authenticity, that are going to resonate, and are going to be able to move up. They're thinking about the deal they need right now to maximize, one particular race over here, their chances of winning that race, or and that's like the best case scenario in a lot of places, or in the worst case scenarios, just to maintain control. They're cutting deals with the Republicans. We saw this in Suffolk County. They're cutting deals with the Conservative Party.
The Democrats are cutting deals with Republicans?
Absolutely. There are parts of New York State where people run on Democratic and Republican lines. We're going to be seeing that even right now in the era of Trump. We're going to be seeing that in lots of places around New York State. So that's the kind of, I think, thinking that we've seen a lot, that short-term thinking. It's divorced from any, everybody knows that to have a healthy organization, you have to have people need to be aligned around a core mission, a vision for where they want to be in 10, 20 years. The Democratic Party right now is missing that, and it's being run by, and in many instances, not in all instances, but in many instances by people who are looking at this short-term gain for themselves or for a particular priority candidate. They're not looking at how do we develop a whole generation of candidates. The WFP, we're really doing that. That's like our whole program, is we want to build out that progressive candidate pipeline with people. We want to do those grassroots trainings. We want to support folks. And we want to push the Democratic Party to support those people who are really going to resonate with, again, working class voters in Trump country, working class people in New York City, working class people, all across the country.
Okay, so that sounds great, right? This is the skeptic out there that's going to say, you can't invest in every single county in America. You can't invest in every single race in America. That's too expensive. You can't invest in all this grassroots. That's still going to cost money, and races are expensive, and that's why the DCCC chooses to invest in some races and not others, because that's their excuse, is that they have a budget, and it's not enough to cover all of these districts. How do you counter that?
Look, there's not a golden rule that you can follow in every instance, but I will say this to you about that. I think there's a tendency, very much so by the consultant class and the Democratic Party establishment, to look at power and resources as a zero-sum game. And I just think we could not disagree more with that. That approach to the world focuses on the idea that we have $10 million to spend this year. If we spend $1 million over here on this race, that's $1 million less than we have to spend on this year on all our races. What we found is that when you're on offense, you're creating new resources and new leverage all over the place. Power and resources are not a zero-sum game at all. We went into Christine's race with very little resources, but Christine created resources. People believed in her. Volunteers came out. People gave money. Candidates bring their own money and resources. And quite frankly, competing in Trump country, we had nothing to lose. If Christine had lost, we would not have looked bad losing there. So investing in that effort we created new power and resources for our movement, and I think that's what the Democratic Party needs to be doing. They need to actually look at bold people who have authenticity, who are going to resonate, and support them everywhere. Are there going to be times when they have to make hard choices? Of course, I don't want to deny that, but at the same time, you have to understand that it's that idea that if you spend $1 here, you have $1 less is just completely contrived and wrong. Because if you spend $1 here around somebody that people believe in, they will create, that dollar will become hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. Grassroots people will get excited. And maybe you could, win that race. You'll be building something that can win races in the future. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference between people who think about power in this moment. I only have $10. If I spend $1 there, I have $9 left. And people who are thinking about 10, 20 years, they think if I put $1 in there and I create a whole thing out there of people who have a history of giving and volunteering, we're going to win races in the future. That's the way that the Democratic Party needs to think about power. And if they don't, the WFP is just going to keep pushing them and ultimately replace them if they don't step up and really fight like that.
Not to mention the fact that you're spreading your message. I mean, what we saw with Trump, I think, was a reaction to the Republicans investing in state legislatures across the country. The message actually is quite similar in a lot of these state legislatures to what Donald Trump was saying in many cases.
Absolutely.
And so when you're out there in every single district talking about these issues, suddenly voters know, oh, if I'm a factory worker who's about to lose their job, I go to the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party, because the Democratic Party's been here talking about these issues. But if you're not there talking about those issues, they're going to go to.
I think that's so important, And this is, I think a criticism that many people levy at the Obama administration, which is that, a lot of times, especially I think under Rahm Emanuel when he was there, they would just be like, well, we can't fight for that because we don't have the votes. And I think that, again, that's this short-term, what about the deal right now approach. When you don't pick the big fights, we have in organizing, we have a saying like sometimes you want to lose well, it's more valuable than winning. And when you don't pick the big fights, you don't get to change the playing field. You don't get to educate millions of people. You don't get to mobilize folks. And folks don't get to see who you are and what you stand for. So I think that is totally right, 100%. And here in New York, I just want to say the state Senate Republicans, they were totally out on Trump's message. People try to say, oh, they're different here. They're more like liberal Republicans. Right? Let me tell you, the hate in their state Senate material towards immigrants, towards people of color, the whole thing about welfare moms are coming for your tax dollars and your property taxes it was straight out of kind of the playbook, the kind of Richard Nixon era playbook. I mean, like so much of what we're seeing now. Divide and conquer, nasty, nasty stuff, willing to demonize parts of our population and really divide and conquer.
And if we don't counter that message, then there's no ability to transform that community.